we'll continue that conversation. I got to tell you guys something here. I'm really looking forward to this. And Pete, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great with these electronics. We're having a little trouble here. I was a baseball player, not a professor.
Pete, we're based in Philly. I want to get, hey, your time in Philly was what?
Great, wonderful. 5 years of a good ball club, great fans, couple World Series, couple playoffs, one World Championship. It was a lot of fun. But don't forget, I selected the Phillies to go to. I could have went to Pittsburgh. I could have went to Kansas City. I could have went three other, Atlanta. But I wanted to go where we had a chance to win, and I was right. Because the only problem the Phillies had in the 70s was the Reds. Now, if I leave the Reds, they don't have that problem no more.
Pete, I want to get into that Reds team. 75-76, you guys win the title. You lose a series to the A's. In your opinion, personally, 72. I think it's the greatest hitting lineup team since the 27 Yankees, all-stars at every single position. However, Pete, did you guys over or underachieve with that talent that you had on that team? Because the A's, they did win 3, Pete, and they won 3 in a row. Did you over or underachieve with the Big Red Machine?
Oh, I don't think we ever underachieved. I mean, I think back in them days, I could be wrong, but I thought the National League had better teams in the American League. That's why we, won 16 out of 17 All-Star games. And when you're playing against better competition, and by the way, in the 72 World Series against Oakland, I made the last out of that series by hitting a line drive to left center off of Raleigh Fingers that Joe Rudy ran down for the final out. But we were in the World Series in 70, 72, playoffs in 73, World Series 75, 76, World Series 80 and 83. So we were doing a lot of postseason baseball in those days.
Pete, when you won the series in 80 in Philly and you won the MVP in what I call the greatest World Series of all time, the 75 series against the Red Sox, which you were the MVP in that series. Which sticks out more in your mind, that 75 series or the 80 series?
Let me rephrase that, okay? I'll help you out with this. The 75 series was the best World Series ever. But the 80 World Series, what I remember most about that series was the crowd on Broad Street on our way from downtown to the stadium out across from the ballpark. There was over 1 million people in the streets. Don't forget, when we won it in 1980, the Phillies have waited 86 years for that championship. So I'd have to say that people were overjoyed, to say the least. And you don't only play for a team, you play for a city. And that team in 1980, we knew we were playing for a city that really loved the Phillies and loved the Phillies for a long time. We had a good team.
Let me give you a Pete Rose moment for Dan Cilio when I was a young player before I went on to play college and pro football, Pete.
Okay.
I was in the stadium in Cincinnati, your very first game back as player manager.
Yeah.
And I remember you got a hit that night. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the Padres. And
all I know, it was a base hit.
It was electric.
It was a base hit, and fortunately for me, the center fielder, I think it was Bobby Denier, made an error, and I went to third, and I went into third head first. And I'll never forget, Don Zimmer was on the other team, and he told me he even got chills that night when I was back home and did a head first slide in the third in the first inning. And I was player manager that night, and we turned the ball club around in those days. I didn't ever win a pennant, but I took over a last place team, and I finished second 4 years in a row. So if I'd have been running a football program, they would have said I did a hell of a job.
Pete, you think that Big Red Machine, like I said, do you think it was the greatest lineup in baseball history?
Well, I don't know about the 27 Yankees, those type of teams. I mean, we'd have held our own with anybody because our second line players were guys like Geronimo, Concepcion, Foster, and Griffey. Those are our second line players. Those are pretty darn good players. Then you put together Morgan, Bench, Perez, and myself. Hey, we had and don't forget the guy who run the show was very, very important to that ball club. And I'm talking about a guy who was like my dad, Sparky Anderson. Sparky knew how to treat players. He knew how to treat people. That's why he was so good. You know, when you're managing a baseball team or coaching a football team or a basketball team, it's all about handling the players. You don't treat everybody alike. You treat everybody as an individual. You don't have a set of rules for everybody. You have one set of rules, and players have to abide by the rules. And we didn't have guys that were late for practice, late for airplanes, missed games, stuff like that. We didn't tolerate that in Cincinnati, and we didn't tolerate that in Philadelphia.
Pete, what has happened to the All-Star game? When I was a kid growing up, that was it. Do you think interleague play has destroyed the All-Star game? Is that why we don't put the reverence on that game like we used to?
Well, you're probably right because, you know, when I played in the All-Star games, you know, my teammates are Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and Clemente and people like that. And these guys always wanted to show the world, including Warren Giles, our league president, that we were a superior league. And I think we were back in the 60s and 70s, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if you agree with this or not. The National League, because of all the AstroTurfs, we had more speed than the American League. You had to have speed if you're playing on AstroTurf because you had to cover the alleys where the ball would go through on AstroTurf. That was the only difference in the leagues. Each league had great players, you know, Skrimskis and K-Lines and people like that, Aarons and Mazes, people like that. But we had overall more speed. And I think it's, you know, I hate to say this, but it's the truth. It was partly because we had more black players. And if you have black players, you're going to have more speed.
Pete, I've always said this about the National League. The National League was more open to bringing in minorities during the 60s, and that's why all the superstars were on that side, and the American League was more hesitant. And if you look from 1964 all the way until like the early 80s, the National League completely dominated the All-Star games because all those great players, like you said, Clemente, Mays, Aaron, all those, I mean, Juan Marichal, McCovey, all those guys were on that side of the aisle.
I was lucky enough to play in 17 All-Star games. And by the way, we won 16. The only one we lost was the one in Detroit in 71 when Reggie Jackson hit that mammoth home run off of Doc Ellis at Detroit Stadium. Hit the transformer on top of the stadium. I never seen a ball hit that hard.
Pete, weren't there a ton of home runs hit by Robinson and Aaron?
Well, there was a lot. Yeah, there was so many Hall of Fame players in that game, or Hall of Fame players to be in that game on both teams. You know, listen. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I look forward to the home run derby this next couple, 3-4 days. But then there again, when I'm watching the replays every night. Every game in baseball today is a home run derby.
Pete, I couldn't wait to get you on because we were talking to Curt Schilling the other day, and we were talking to Gary Sheffield, and I go, Pete, today, if a guy strikes out like Mike Trout 160 times and takes the walk of shame back to the dugout 4 times a game, it's no big deal. When you guys played, if you struck out 40 times in a year, you would probably consider that a horrible year.
Well, I'm just wondering when I watch baseball, and I watch it every darn day, at least 2 games, sometimes 3 games, because I live on the West Coast. But there again, where is all this pitching they're talking about? I don't know where it is. A guy asked me the other day, he says, let me ask you something. I was at a banquet somewhere, and he said, what do you think you'd hit if you were playing today? And I hesitated for a moment. I said, maybe 210, 212. And he said, wow, pitching's really that good? I said, no, I'm 81 years old.
Absolutely. Hey, Pete, let me get your thoughts on some of the guys today. What's your read and what's your opinion on Bryce Harper of the Phillies?
He's a great player. There's no question about it. I like Bryce Harper. I mean, he's one of the top players in baseball. Trout's one of the top players in baseball. Personally, I like Freddie Freeman. I think Freddie Freeman's really a good player and really a good hitter. And it's not coincidental. There where this guy goes, they win. He's one of those guys. So, but there again, striking out is part of the game today. I don't know if I could play in a league that striking out is part of the game. You know, I struck out 1,000 times, which sounds like a lot, but don't forget I batted 15,000 times. Now,
and you played 25 years, didn't you?
Yeah. Now you're telling me that I struck out 45 times out of every 600 at bats. When you say it that way, it doesn't seem like much. But there again, as you know, the only way you can't get on first is if you strike out. You can't get on first because not many catchers blow strike three. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And my job was to get on base for Bench, Morgan, and Perez to score 2,000 runs. Ricky Henderson's job for Rudy and Tennis and those guys was to get on base. That's why he scored 2,000 runs. You know, people have to understand when you're playing any sport today and you're keeping score, you got to get one more point or run or whatever you want to call it than the opposition. Because the only reason you're playing sports today, I think, is to win. And if you're not thinking about winning, you shouldn't be playing.
Pete, let me ask you about Shohei Ohtani. What's your thoughts on him and what he's doing to the game?
Well, Shohei's one of the best, if not the best player in baseball. Not because he can pitch and not because he can hit, because he can do both. But there again, you know, when you got a Shohei Ohtani and you got a Mike Trout and a Rondon and people like that, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to win. You know, good players get their teams over the hump, if you know what I mean. You know,
absolutely.
Joe Morgan,
Pete, what do you make of the pitch clock?
I like it because it's speeding up the game. It's speeding up the game. I'm tired of these guys stepping out, adjusting their gloves every damn pitch. Get them on, get in there. You know, I wore gloves when I hit with pine tar and stuff. I don't remember stepping out of the box every damn pitch and readjusting my gloves. You know, I mean, it's just, and I know players want fast games. Let me tell you something. Players don't like to be at the ballpark. They do for 2 hours. They do for 2 hours, and they want to get their ass home. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
They don't like to sit around the ballpark for 3.5 hour games. The only time you like a 3.5 hour game is if it's 13-12 and you got 3 hits in the Harper and you got another at bat coming. You think you like a 4 hour game when you're 0 for 5 and you got another
hey, Pete, I didn't like to stay at an NFL stadium. I want to get there, get the hell out, go home. I'm with you here. Hey, Pete, let me ask you
somewhere. You don't have to go home, but go somewhere.
Hey, Pete, let me ask you this. Steve Carlton, Bob Gibson, Tom Seaver, Koufax,
Drysdale, Sutton, Negro. Those are all the Hall of Famers I faced.
Which one did you have the toughest against?
I couldn't hit Koufax with a table. I was 10 for 57 off of him. But don't forget, that's true. But don't forget, that's 175 if you're doing your math. But I was a kid. I just got to the big leagues. I wasn't the only one wasn't hitting Koufax. You know, I hit 340 off Marichal. I hit 307 off Gibson. I hit 570 off of Warren Spahn. You know, once I saw pitchers, I hit them. But that's why I wasn't a good all-star performer. Because in the all-star game, you would bat 4 times and see 3 different pitchers. and I'd never seen them before. So it would take me one at bat or so to figure out what they throw, because no one in baseball history, I don't think, knew pitchers that you were facing more than I did, and did my homework. I didn't have a book. My book was in my head, and I knew what guys throw or what they threw and how they tried to get you out. Because if you don't know what's coming, you can't hit it. I don't give a damn who you are.
Hey, Pete, I got to tell you, I was at Shea when you hit 3 home runs in that game.
Yeah, I got 2 singles, too.
So you were 5 for 5 in that game?
Yeah. That was one of the 10 times I got 5 hits.
You hit 3 home runs in that game, and everyone in the stands is going like this. He doesn't hit home runs.
I know. I hit one off of Marty Conejo, Butch Metzger, and Nino Espinosa. 3 different pitchers, 3 home runs. and let me tell you another thing, which is unusual. I hit it to every field, left field, center field, and right field, all batting left-handed.
That's right. Hey, couple last questions for you, Pete. The game itself today, do you like where the game is?
I like the players in the game because I think there's some really, really good players. But there again, I don't know about you. I'm just fed up with so many home runs. You know, I played against some major league home run hitters.
Absolutely.
Aarons and Clementes and Mays. And people like that. And these guys were home run hitters. And I don't ever remember home runs being hit like they are today. You know, I really believe if I was playing today, I would be in the 20 home run club.
Yeah.
And the most I ever got was 16. Because what I did is what you have to do to hit home runs, especially in some of these bandbox ballparks they got. Houston,
yeah, but Pete, you would hit 378 too because of the watered down pitching.
Well, I would hit. I mean, I would hit a lot, and I would get a lot of hits. But I'm not bad mouthing anybody when I say that. It's just the way the game is played. Okay, but there's nobody I don't think ever played that faced better pitching than we did in the 60s and 70s.
I completely. Hey, Pete, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. I mean, you know, some guys ask it a different way, but I'm going to do this. Have you come to grips with it that these people, for whatever reason, even though gambling now in sports is so prevalent, it's legal now, it's all this and that. And by the way, for the record, Pete, even if you did gamble as a manager, I don't know how that affected you as a player. I mean, if you want to ban Pete Rose for managing, fine. But how do you take a 25-year career away that everyone you see, Pete, the Hall of Fame is not complete unless you're in it. You realize that, right?
Well, let me go a step further on that. Okay. Have I given up on that? Partly. I've been suspended since '89. You know how long that is?
Yes.
But there again, I believe if Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame, they shouldn't have one.
Right.
If Roger Clemens is not in the Hall of Fame, you shouldn't have one. Check these guys' records out. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they took steroids. Who gives? It didn't hurt me. If I'm facing a guy that took steroids, I didn't give a shit. I didn't give a damn. If he needed that to get me out, it's like if I could have took 2 steps back in the box and make it 62 feet, I'd have did it. I'd have tried to do it because it would have made my job easier. You understand what I'm saying?
So you've come to go like this, but because Pete, no one has to say this when I have a signed baseball from you and by you. Yeah. And you know what, Pete, I would say this to you. I don't need anyone to tell me you're a Hall of Famer. We know it. Yeah. Don't you? Do you get satisfaction in that?
Yeah, but there again, you want to be in a real club. Listen, I know all about the Hall of Fame. I know all about the Hall of Fame players. I know all about the history of the game. Okay? I followed that.
You are the history, though.
I lived that. I mean, I have more records than Michael Jackson, for Christ's sake. Okay. But there again, I would never bet against my team. Never. I had so much faith in my young players that I had when I was managing. I wanted to bet on them every night. I wanted to bet on them every night. I should have.
Why did Bart Giamatti and Faye Vincent, why did they so ruthlessly go after you, Pete?
Well, I think Bart would have given me an opportunity. But don't forget, 7 days after he suspended me, okay, 7 days, he dropped dead of a heart attack.
I know. That's right.
I really think Bart would have called me in a year later and gave me an opportunity to be reinstated. I like to think so because, to be honest with you, when I was a player,
I thought there was a conversation of that too, Pete. That
yeah, there was.
A chance.
But then he dies, and everybody got carried away with him dying. I mean, Howard Cosell actually said, I killed him. I wasn't the reason that Bart was 70 pounds overweight. I wasn't the reason that Bart smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day. That was his problem. And he was an intelligent man. When he used to be on the road, listen to this. Nobody knows this. When he used to be on the road and I was playing in that town, several times he would have me come up to his room and just talk about the good of the game. What can we do to make the game better? He would talk to me because I was the number one player in the game. I love Bart Giamatti.
Huh.
But
so after all these years, Pete, no animosity towards those guys taking
I'm the one that screwed up. I can't have animosity. I'm the one that broke the rules. I'm the one that caused the suspension. But there again, enough is enough. Enough is enough. I mean, 89, 99, 109, almost 42 years I've been suspended. Hell, if I'd have killed her, I'd have been out of prison by now.
Enough is enough.
If you know what I mean. If you know what I mean.
Hey, Pete, I really appreciate your candor in this because, again, man, I couldn't imagine having done what you've done in my small microcosm of my life and to what you've accomplished. Pete, you're on the All-Century team. I mean, how could you have a guy in the All-Century team not in Cooperstown?
I don't know. I love Cooperstown. I love the people of Cooperstown. I love the players. I got all the respect in the world for guys who go into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to the Hall of Fame again this year. I usually go up there at Safe at Home and sign autographs for 4 or 5 days, and I get received real well. As you can imagine, everywhere I go for banquets and stuff, appearances like that, my support is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. Sure, there's always some people say you should never give him a chance. This is America, man. You get a second chance.
How the Reds treat you, Pete?
I really did nothing that makes me not deserve a second chance.
Hey, Pete, how do the Reds treat you?
Great. I mean, the Reds are great. They got a good team this year, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they're on fire.
They've done a nice job in their minor league system.
Oh, they got some good young players over there. I mean, playing hungry. I don't know if they got beat today. They was going for a sweep in Washington. But there again, let's talk just a moment. We got a moment?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Pete.
Let's talk about there's one division, I think it's the American League East, that every team is over 500. And then you got the rest of the divisions that at the bottom have stinko clubs. I don't have to name them. You know who the bad clubs are. Washington's a bad club. Kansas City's a bad club. Detroit's a bad club. I mean, and these good clubs just beat up on these bad clubs. The best team in baseball today, I think you'll agree, is the Braves.
Yep, the Braves. And I would say this too, Pete, the Rays. What the Rays do, Pete, what the Rays do with a $68 million payroll.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Those $200 million payroll teams in the American League East is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. That it just goes to show you it's not how much you pay them, but it's what they can do in a baseball uniform.
What's wrong in New York with the Mets, Pete?
I guess Bucky's on a short leash right now, I think.
He was manager of the year a year ago.
I know. Let me tell you, I tell people this all the time, and I think you're one that will understand this. You know what makes a good manager in baseball, football, basketball, hockey?
Communication?
No. One thing, and one thing only. Good players. You know any managers that have horseshit players?
No.
If you don't have good players, babe, you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
And Buck's got good players. What's he got? Max Scherzer and Verlander in his rotation?
Yep. And he's got all those players, too, that are just not achieving like they did a year ago. One of the worst teams with runners in scoring position, too. I mean, they just can't hit to save their life with guys on base. That's what the Reds are doing great this year.
Yes, they are. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Here's another thing. Why does Mike Trout never lead his team to the promised land? Willie did. Hank did. Clemente did. I did. Bench did. Morgan did. Schmidt
Pete, how can you have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout on your team and you don't go anywhere?
Rendon's a pretty good player too.
Yes. Right.
I mean, there comes a time when you got to call these players out. You can't blame the manager for everything. Because let me tell you something. You may disagree with this. I doubt if you will, though. But there's 30 managers in baseball. And I don't want to say that this manager on this team knows more about baseball than this manager on this team. Even though one's in third place and one's in 16th place. Baseball managers all know the same about baseball. The same about football, basketball, hockey. However, the managers that succeed are the managers that know most about their players. Okay? What makes them tick?
You know what, Pete? What's his name told me? The former manager of the Cubs, he used to be down in Tampa. Man, it just blew my mind. He said that for him to get everything out of all of his players, he had to have a personal relationship with every single one of them so that it didn't become destructive but constructive. Yeah. So that he could be a guy who could connect with all 24 guys that were in the
You're talking about Joe Madden, who
right.
You're talking about.
Joe Madden told me that, said I had to have a relationship with everybody in the dugout so that they didn't come off thinking I was destructive.
Here's what Sparky used to teach me, okay, who was one of the smartest guys off the field of anybody I've ever been around. Very positive. Sparky used to tell me, and think about this, and it's absolutely 100% correct. There's 3 ways you can treat a player, and only 3 ways. Pat him on the ass, kick him in the ass, or leave him alone. And it's up to you to know your personnel. You don't kick the guy and he's left alone. Okay? You don't leave alone a guy that needs kicked. If you're going to make the players bust their ass every day and go out there and try to win, you got to know what makes their heart beat. Does that make any sense?
Yo, completely. Because
the good managers today,
some guys have to be hit with feathers, Pete. Some guys have to be hit with hammers.
Yeah, good managers aren't the guys with the best players today. It's the guys who understand their personnel the best. That's when you can get the most out of somebody. And you know the managers, and I know the managers. Last year, Buck Showalter got the most out of everybody. This year, he's not getting the most out of anybody. Same guy, same players, different reaction.
Pete, I got to ask you this. Rounding third All-Star game, you had dinner the night before at Ray Fosse's house. Did it ever cross your mind not to run him over? Or was that because it's your DNA?
Yeah, I didn't round third wanting to run him over, okay? First of all, I had Leo DeRocher chasing my ass down the third base line. He was coach of third. And if you watch the replay, and I know you have, I actually started the slide head first. And I look at Ray, and he's got both shin guards blocking the plate. So I'm saying to myself, if I slide head first, I'm going to be out. and I'll probably separate both of my shoulders. So I went over him, tagged the plate with my right hand, my knee hit his shoulder. As he went down, I bent over to ask him, was he okay? Because I did take him out to eat the night before.
You're friends.
Yes, yes. And by the way, I missed the next 3 games. He didn't miss any. But I was the bad guy in that.
God, and that's what made those All-Stars.
That game was in Cincinnati, and my dad was in the front row. So I had to do what I had to do.
That's what makes those games so electric. Pete, when you start talking to me about you're in the outfield with Roberto Clemente and Henry Aaron and all them guys that were on those teams, and Willie Mays, and I think Mays even made the All-Star game his final year, even when he was with the Mets, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, I think that was kind of like the gift to him, because he was bowing out there with that.
Should have been.
But I mean, what an iconic time, because you look at the All-Star game today, Pete, I just don't see the same. I just don't feel the same energy.
Well, yeah, because they're all All-Stars. I mean, listen.
They're not All-Stars, Pete. They're Hall of Famers.
Yeah, there is no Willie Mays playing today. There is no Hank Aaron's playing today.
You don't think Mike Trout's anything close to Mays?
Maybe he will be. Not right now. It's just like all I hear the last 2 or 3 days. I think he's got 2,100 hits now. Tremendous hitter. Joey Votto. They keep calling him a Hall of Famer. You don't go to the Hall of Fame with 2,100 hits. You don't. When you got another guy with twice as many.
Pete, how many years did it take you to get 2,100 hits? 10?
No, because I only got 309 my first 2 years.
Huh?
Then all of a sudden I got 200 for like 10 straight years.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, Pete, we have what an absolute history lesson in the world of baseball, man. I thank you so much for being patient with us to get you on here.
No, you guys are the best.
Thank you so much, Pete.
I'll go on anytime you want to talk baseball.
You got it. That is excellent to hear. Thank you, Pete. The legendary Pete Rose. We got to take a timeout on that one. I got to kind of digest that. I could have kept asking him questions. Fly, I could have kept asking him baseball questions until the end of the program. That was fantastic. Way to go, Xander, and making that happen, man. Thank you very much, man. Pete Rose, dude, he was very – I want to talk about the gambling when we come back a little bit more. Let's kind of gather ourselves there. I've only talked to Pete Rose twice in my broadcasting career. About 25 years ago, when I was at Fox Sports Radio, my wife got him on. And right here, the legendary Pete Rose. And he was open about the gambling. Let's take a time out, hit the like button, keep it here on the National Football Show.
Do you stream?